Porkins Policy Radio, offering a unique perspective on everything: geopolitics, culture creation, the reality of the world we live in. Coming to you live from New York City, your host, Pierce Redmond.
Okay, everybody, welcome back to another episode of Porkins Policy Radio. As always, I am your host, Pierce Redmond, and you can find the show here at American Freedom Radio, AmericanFreedomRadio.com, as well as on my website, which is PorkinsPolicyReview.com. And if you are new to the show, there are lots of ways to listen. You can, of course, find me on iTunes, TuneIn, Stitcher, Google Play, a whole bunch of other podcatchers, and you can also hear me replayed on Friday nights from, I believe it's, I've got to double check, but 10 to midnight, I believe, is my my time slot, on a host of other networks, including Awake, PSN, I'm on Ed Opperman's Spreaker channel, lots of ways to listen. Of course, if you want to support my work, you can always go to patreon.com/Pierce Redmond, and you can become a subscriber for as little as $1 a month. And quickly, I just want to say it's good to be back from my vacation. Last week's episode with Issa Bloomy was pre-recorded, if you didn't know. So I have been away. I'm well rested, and I'm glad to be speaking with all of the listeners right now. And very quickly, I just want to say that there will, rest assured, I know everyone gets a little freaked out when we get towards the end of the month and they still haven't seen the bonus podcast. That is going to happen. It is probably going to be me and Chuck Ocelli talking about Counterpart, one of our favorite TV shows. But enough of me rambling on about Patreon, because I am joined by someone that I support on Patreon, a good friend of the show, JP Sottile of NewsVandal.com, and of course the man behind the News Vandal Rundown. JP, how are you?
Well, I'm not as rested as you are, because I was on the news cycle over the last 10 days, and it has been a nutty week, which of course was punctuated. Well, I thought it was punctuated yesterday with that wonderfully fascinating and hilarious presser and what followed. But of course, before we came on the air, we were watching Donald Trump walk back the presser, saying that he misspoke. He meant to say he didn't see any reason why Russia would not be behind the hacking, when he said when he actually said, I don't see any reason why Russia would be behind the hacking. So obviously, with almost every Republican in Congress, including Jim Jordan. I noticed that Representative Jim Jordan, you know who I'm talking about.
Yes, of course.
And for listeners, if you've seen him, even though you may not put the name with the face, he's the guy, sort of the bulldog who never wears a suit jacket, never wears a tie. He always has his shirt open. He was recently accused of looking the other way when he was an assistant wrestling coach, and there was some malfeasance going on, some hijinks going on. Let's call them hijinks in the boys' shower. And he has been sort of the staunchest defender of Donald Trump against the deep state plot of Russiagate. And even he on Twitter said that he doesn't trust Putin and Russia and so on and so forth. So with all of those people abandoning him, and I would assume Dan Coates, the director of national intelligence, who quickly issued a statement yesterday contradicting everything that the president, his boss, said in the presser, that some of these people basically said to him, look, you're going to have to walk this back. And as you and I noted watching before we came on the air, he looked like somebody who was being forced to walk it back.
Oh yeah, definitely. I don't think this is something that he would have wanted to do. Although at the same time, I mean, I don't know what he was thinking by coming out and saying. I mean, he had to know what that's what I always find bizarre about Trump when he makes these grandiose statements, is that even he, in the back of his mind, he has to know this is a stupid thing, that somebody is going to be like, dude, you've got to tone that down, or you've got to change that, even you can't get away with that. And I don't know, I kind of personally find it funny when he has to walk these things back, especially I misspoke is such a lame excuse. And especially like a full 24 hours later, it's like, did he not realize? Like when did he realize he misspoke?
Right.
And you can almost kind of imagine his administration is, that nobody. It's sort of like, all right, let's all draw straws to see who's going to tell the president that he misspoke.
Well, Pierce, doesn't this, what you just pointed out, get to the heart of the labyrinth or the puzzles that surround all of these things that have to do with the Trump administration? One, is he compromised? Does Putin have something on him? Does that explain it? Or is he just so insanely narcissistic that he has created for himself an alternative universe in which he cannot accept anything that challenges the size of his election? And I make that turn of phrase notably because I think that there is a crossover between the two things, if you know what I mean. Then, it also cuts to something that I've ruminated on my own many times, and it's something that struck me the very first week of his presidency. After Sean Spicer, and this is the biggest election in the history of mankind and all that stuff, on that Monday, he brought in construction workers and steel workers, and he was basically set up on that Monday to kick off a presidency that was going to service the working class. And it was going to focus on infrastructure. It was basically going to be kind of an old-style Democrat election, right? Administration, where he was going to be a populist and speaking to the people and get America building again. And he could have been the builder president. At that time, that Monday, I thought he could pull this off. He could actually have a successful presidency. Of course, he didn't do that. He didn't go down that road, and I think he has revealed over time who his constituents are. That would be Wall Street, the defense industry, the oil industry, the Saudi Arabians, and Bibi Netanyahu, and then for many people think Putin. But it gets to this question of what you were bringing up about the presser. All he had to say was, well, I asked the president and he denied it. Our intelligence services say that he's wrong about that, but I'm not going to let what happened in the past get in the way of the future. If he had said that, none of this would have happened.
Right, which is, sorry to jump in, JP, but it's so spot on. He doesn't, I know that, everyone's saying the Treason Summit, which is, I think, a little harsh. I mean, people need to actually look up the definition of treason. Because if that was treasonous, then virtually all presidents in our entire history are treasonous, of the modern era. Any president that then, come on, Rumsfeld. He literally shook Saddam's hand and gave him weapons. That is treasonous then, any of these, there's so many instances where U.S. officials would be, held liable for treason, which is like a really serious charge. I don't think people quite fully understand the severity of that. What was it, the Rosenbergs? They were executed for treason. Yeah. This is like a really serious phrase or legal term to be throwing around. But beyond that, it's not. Countries do shitty stuff to one another all the time. Yeah. And they still at the end of the day work together. So exactly. I don't listen. Bush went and remember I looked into Putin's eyes.
Saw his soul, baby.
Yeah, we are friendly with dictators all the time, or countries that do bad things to one another. That's sort of par for the course when it comes to international relations and geopolitics. Like you just said, JP, he could have said that, and it would have been, kind of like a blip. And I think in some ways it would have kind of, not necessarily an olive branch to the Democrats, but at least, they could point to that. Well, he did admit something.
It would have undercut one of the nagging issues of his presidency. And I think that's where people double back to this other idea that there must be something there. There must be something financially, there must be some peccadillo or something, because it is so inexplicable that he would not do the obvious to actually undercut his opposition inside the United States.
Yeah, I know exactly. That's the key piece here is that and I can't tell if this is, like you say, JP, that there is some sort of dirt or he truly is an unmitigated moron. But,
or like a narcissist who cannot. I mean, that's the thing that I think it's either a geopolitical answer to the question or a psychological answer to the question. And there's so many markers that it's a psychological question. And, you know, we will find out. The other possibility will be answered. I mean, this is one of the things that frustrates me about all of the things that have to do with Russiagate and Mueller, is that people say, oh, no, we have all the evidence of collusion. We have no evidence of collusion. And occasionally when I'm not just tired of all the trolling on both sides. You know, you pointed out the treason word. It's treason. It's a traitor. He's a traitor. It's a traitorous event. And then you hear on the other side, oh, all these other people think that it's treason to avert nuclear war. I'm like, wait a minute. There was no treason, and we're not on the brink of nuclear war. Can we all just get a grip? So when I get past that, I want to say to people who say there is all evidence of collusion, there is no evidence of collusion. Like, so you have a mole inside the Mueller investigation? You know what Mueller knows? I mean, we are going to find out what he knows or what he alleges he knows. And eventually, when he issues in a report, there will be underlying documents. There'll be all this corroborating evidence that could be poured over. We will find that stuff out. So in the interim, we are really left with the question of his psychology, because I think in a lot of ways, if what we find ourselves in is an abusive relationship with an insane narcissist. And we cannot escape this person, because the one takeaway that I have from every new news cycle, every new tempest in a teapot, every new tweet storm that turns into a scandal, is that Trump is winning on a fundamental level. Because I think for Trump to be the center of attention for the entire world is his ultimate reward.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And it's just, I really, you know, I was saying before I was on vacation, and it was so nice to sort of be away from all of this, and then to come back, and then it's just like, you know, shit salad that Trump is sort of, you know, serving up, or that his administration is, or whatever, you know, the sort of larger story behind all this. JP, let's just dissect a few other little bits and pieces, because aside from this huge sort of reversal, you know, that now Trump loves, again, you know, he loves the CIA. They're the best agency.
Yeah.
I trust them. You know, all of this sort of stuff. And you know, this is one of the things, quickly I'll say, that really frustrates me, is that again, it's like no matter what he does, this always plays into his most ardent supporters' hands, because now, of course, this is, you see the deep state twisted his arm and made him say this.
Oh, I think, yes, and I think one of the reasons why he intentionally, his delivery seems intentionally choppy whenever he's given a prepared statement, like after Charlottesville, is it's his way of communicating to his people that he has a deep state gun to his head.
Yes, right. Which also is, you know, I thought he was supposed to be draining the swamp and defeating the deep state, but apparently, you know, like that's the weird thing about it, is it's like Trump is the most powerful leader, yet he can't, you know, say what he wants without someone, you know, I just don't really quite understand the logic of some of these, very misguided Trump supporters who have this very strange, narrow view of what the quote-unquote deep state is. But that aside, there were some other sort of strange little bits and pieces in this press conference that took place in Helsinki, and I wanted to just touch on a few of them, JP, get your idea or your perspective. One, there's the Bill Browder allegations by Putin, which I know that got like a huge, you know, oh my God, people were kind of losing it. You know, for the most part for me, I found the entire conference to be much ado about nothing. Trump said nothing new that he hasn't already said 1,000 times before. Putin said nothing really all that new or interesting. I mean, he had a few things like the Bill Browder section, but nothing Putin said, even the George Soros stuff. I mean, again, he's not incorrect in what he's saying. You know, George Soros does fund, you know, color revolutions and things. You know, I don't think he's
through
quite
the Open Society Foundation.
Yeah,
it has been
absolutely.
Yeah.
You know, and Soros will be the first to admit this.
Yes.
You know, he doesn't deny it. So again, I don't really know why either side gets so bent out of shape about that, But that aside, there was really nothing all that new there. I mean, what were your major takeaways? Because I have two things that I found to be puzzling and kind of terrifying, but I want to get your takeaways and maybe your thoughts on the Bill Browder stuff.
Well, on the Browder thing, Browder was, for just a quick aside, your listeners probably know all of this, I'm almost certain of it, but just to reestablish quickly, he was the guy who was instrumental in getting the Magnitsky Act. Magnitsky was a business partner, and he is somebody who ended up dying a sort of a really painful death in jail. And Browder is a businessman who was in that hurly-burly of the oligarch era and making a lot of money, and in some way was part of a competing cadre of money laundering oligarchic scumbags inside Russia. And so Browder has been framed often in heroic terms, but when you dig around Browder's life, you find out that it's way more complicated than that. And from Vladimir Putin's point of view, I can absolutely understand why he would use Browder as a wedge. And I think what he's really communicating is, in a much more subtle way, his disdain for the sanctions structure that comes with the Magnitsky Act. Because the Magnitsky Act is something that's not just the United States. This is something that's kind of spread around to Canada and to the United Kingdom, and the United Kingdom in particular is a key point of entry for Russian oligarch money into the Western world.
Where Bill Browder is a citizen.
Exactly. And so this is a big deal to Putin, right? So, a lot of this has to do with money. Just to give a little context, and we'll get around to it, because I think we've gone over this before in previous shows. I think one of the frames that I just despise more than anything is to say, Russia attacked our democracy. They attacked our democracy. Well, okay, attack, fine, if you need to use that. If you really want to use the terminology, what you should say is counterattacked. Because I think what we saw, even with that press conference, is a man who is involved in a long spy versus spy, like Mad Magazine, competition with U.S. intelligence services, and one of the broadsides from the U.S. toward Putin and Putin's Russia was the Panama Papers. And the Panama Papers was what? This was uncovering all of these mechanisms by which the people around Vladimir Putin were laundering money. And Bill Browder is an element of that big story. And so I think that a lot of what we have seen over the last 3 years is a direct response to what the United States was doing at the direction of Hillary Clinton through Victoria Nuland in Ukraine, obviously, and I'm still the only person to ever write about the role of big agricultural interests in Ukraine and the takeover of the Ukrainian agricultural economy, which was working hand in glove with Freedom House, which is a semi-governmental agency, and Victoria Nuland, and a weird consulting firm called Sigma Blazer, which had its eye on the dark, loamy soil of the breadbasket of the Soviet Union after the Soviet Union collapsed. So there's all of that stuff is going on there, and so on the other side, then you had the Panama Papers, which I still believe was an intelligence agency operation. If you know anything about Panama, Panama is a place where the CIA has been very active for many, many years. People wondered, well, why is it in this Panama Papers thing we didn't have very many Americans in there? Why did it seem to target primarily Pakistan, China, and Russia? I wonder. As a matter of fact, Pakistan is still dealing with the fallout of that with Sharif.
And
all that.
He had to resign.
Yep, and he's actually just got on a plane and went back to Pakistan to face charges and was arrested.
Yeah.
This is all fallout from the Panama Papers. And so the reason I'm being circuitous here is because this really does tie in with Browder and in a way with Trump, because the question around Trump is how much of his money, this money that appeared out of nowhere. There's a really fascinating story about how he was able to buy this golf course he just went to in Scotland with cash that just came out of the blue from nowhere, and his involvement with Deutsche Bank. And Deutsche Bank has a very well-established history of laundering money for a lot of unsavory characters, including a lot of Russian oligarchs and wealthy Russian billionaires connected to Putin's regime. And Deutsche Bank had a big judgment against them, and not surprisingly, the Trump administration reduced the size of that judgment against them. And so all of this ties into this problem of money and money flows out of Putin's Russia. And where is that money going to go? How's that money going to get there? And Bill Browder is a key character in closing that down, because Browder, as somebody who was basically a semi-criminal element competing inside Russia, knew where all the bodies were buried and handed those keys over to Western judicial agencies, the DOJ in particular, and to Congress, and then that turned into the Magnitsky Act. Right.
And no, I know, and the way that Browder is being framed by some people, like you said, is his hero. I mean, he's one of these. He was an American. He's now a UK citizen, but he was just one of those Americans that went to Moscow and St. Petersburg in the 1990s when it was a complete free-for-all and made a ton of money and did a lot of shady stuff. And that's not to say that there weren't people under Putin's wing doing this. Of course they were, but that was I found that the Browder stuff, you just like duh. I mean, I didn't find it all that new or interesting, or I accepted it. I'm sure he probably did give lots of money to Hillary Clinton. It would behoove Bill Browder to do that. But
exactly.
And
by the same token, this is something I bring up with people who have an understandable Hillary derangement syndrome, because I think that motivates a lot of people, and I think there are a lot of people on the left and the right who are recalcitrant in the face of what seems to be at least mounting circumstantial evidence. I mean, that was a heck of an indictment that Mueller dropped, and putting those 12 names out there may have compromised a lot of intelligence operations. I mean, there is a whole other game going on beyond whether Russia colluded with Trump. There's another intelligence chessboard being played on right now, and that's part of it. But what I like to say to people is the very things that you hate about Hillary Clinton are exactly the reasons why Vladimir Putin would be motivated to keep her from becoming president.
Yeah. And again, Putin was very honest when that question was posed to him. He said, of course I wanted Trump to win.
Yep.
Which is not just for the people out there, and I doubt any of the listeners would really kind of hold this opinion, but that's not him admitting to treason or collusion. I mean, believe me, our presidents express well, of course we wanted so and so to win in Nigeria, or pick a country. It doesn't matter,
How about Obama with Brexit?
Yeah, exactly. Or I mean, the U.S. and Boris Yeltsin. Of course, we wanted Yeltsin to win. Yeah. That's why we sent an American team to run his campaign.
And oh, by the way, if we want to get deep into this narrative frame, because I think it's vitally important. It's still one of the things that frustrates me. We really want to know the roots of what's going on right now. It is all about the 90s. Yeah. It is all about the Harvard boys under Jeffrey Sachs going over there, instituting shock therapy. Shock therapy on the Russian economy created the oligarchs in this massive scramble to auction off resources and state-run industries. And all the while, a drunken buffoon was being propped up by the United States. And there are two things that stand out to me. The famous press conference where Boris Yeltsin had too much to drink, had a giant bulbous sort of clown nose from all of the alcohol he had consumed, and was telling jokes, and Bill Clinton was doubled over in tears with laughter. And then there was the famous rally in Moscow where he gets up on a stage and he's dancing and he's drunk then. And people who know something about Russia and have some contacts inside Russia and written about it have recounted the utter horror that people like Vladimir Putin had at the precipitous decline of Russia's standing on the world stage with Boris Yeltsin, this drunken clown, as their representative. And I think that there has been a methodical program since 1999 by Vladimir Putin to restore some semblance of international standing for Russia and the Russian people. And I actually think on that front, he's actually accomplished it. Russia is now it's hitting above its weight. It is a far more powerful power than its economy would seem to indicate, or its military budget. The military budget is the amount that Donald Trump increased the military budget in his first year. Just the amount he increased it. You know, the $85 billion is almost twice as much as Russia's total budget.
Right.
So that's pretty impressive on the part of Vladimir Putin to bring the Olympics. He gets the World Cup. He does this, and while he's doing that, him and Medvedev and his buddies around him have made huge amounts of money off of Sochi and huge amounts of money off of sweetheart contracts around World Cup, which brings us back around to Bill Browder and the Magnitsky Act, because they have all this money and they cannot repatriate it.
Yeah, exactly. So much to unpack there alone. I wanted to also...
Sorry.
No. I mean...
I got up early. I had a lot of coffee.
Yeah, no, that's great.
I want to ask you. You had these two scary things from the presser. What are those?
Well, so I don't know if it's scary, but, you know, I am still sort of fascinated by this amazing moment, which probably now seems like a lifetime ago to many people, but that moment during a press conference where Donald Trump's dentures appeared to be about ready to pop out of his mouth. And you know, and that weird way that he gets, I know people sort of say that it's him slurring his words, but to me, it sounds like really bad dry mouth.
Right. And
there were a few moments during this press conference where Trump had that kind of, you know, he started talking like that again, like the dry mouth thing.
Right.
And
which
I don't know
people
if
think might be a TIA, like a little trans-ischemic attack, a little sort of mini stroke or something, is what people often think.
And I don't know if you've heard about these rumors, and these are, you know, completely unsubstantiated, but there is a rumor floating around that you know, Roger Stone in his pocket has this, you know, Trump will never betray him, because Stone apparently was providing Trump with like Adderall and uppers for a long time. And you know, as someone that has consumed Adderall in the past, you do get dry mouth from that. And
you could do 7 different rallies in 4 different states in a 24-hour period if you're on Adderall, because you're going. I mean,
exactly. Right. Yeah. Nothing is stopping you. And also, you know, Adderall does not increase you know, creativity or any of these things that people believe. All it really does is it increases obsessive behavior, which is like, you know, all of Trump's speeches are exactly the same.
Yeah.
The same word, you know, which is somebody that's on speed all the time. That's what they're going to do. They're going to increase obsessive behavior. So the hand things, the way he talks, all that stuff. So there were a few moments where he had the kind of dry mouth thing, but then also there was a few moments where it looked like Trump fell asleep on stage. You know, where he would close his eyes, not like he was blinking, but he would have his eyes closed for like a good 7-6 seconds, and then would just sort of open them up like, I'm still here, right? And, you know, I know that people made a big deal about Hillary Clinton's health, and I think there were some legitimate reasons to bring that up.
The stagger. I mean, the stagger was...
and the whole pneumonia, and then hugging this little girl. I mean, none of that made... Obviously, they're covering up something. But, you know, whatever. She's not the president. He is. So when all these weird health things happen, I'm always just a little curious. And again, nobody now wants to talk about that. But I found that a little, you know, disturbing. He's falling asleep. He's getting dry mouth. And then... and I bring this up to kind of link them together. When his dentures, or whatever that moment was, where his, you know, I guess he drank too much Diet Coke and nobody told the president to hydrate. When his dentures almost fell out, he was talking about Israel, and I believe it was it was like something about the eventual move of the embassy. And I bring that up because during this press conference, he gets a question about Syria. And then he just sort of goes off in a whole other direction talking about Israel. And I don't know that they're actually related, but that just sort of stuck in my mind and made me think about the dry mouth denture thing.
Well, you got something there, but let's keep going.
Well, he gets asked this question about Russia and U.S. military operations in Syria and what's going to happen. And then, I mean, it's almost like he heard a different question, which at first I thought, oh, maybe I was originally reading the transcript, and I thought, well, maybe it was like a Russian reporter who asked the question and maybe he heard the translation wrong. But it's an American, or no, I'm sorry, I believe it was a reporter from RT that spoke perfect English who asked the question.
Yep.
And in that moment, when Trump starts going off about Israel, Putin looks confused and is sort of like, where is he going with this?
Yeah.
And then Putin, he kept taking out his earphone, I guess when he wanted to speak Russian, which is stupid. First off, Putin speaks English perfectly.
Speaks English. Yep.
Yeah, he speaks Russian, English, and German perfectly. But anyway, Putin ripped out his earphone. And then he put it back in because Trump kept kind of babbling on about Syria and Israel. And I don't know, to me, it was just one of those moments again where it's like, I'm sorry, is this guy playing with a full deck? Did he hear a different question? Did he, did he fall asleep? Was he so high that he didn't quite know where, he's off in another world and then realizes, oh, God, somebody's asked me something. I guess I'll just go off about Israel. I mean, and he sort of brought it around to Syria at the end. And I don't know, maybe somebody was whispering in his microphone like, sir, you've got to, bring this back around. But I don't know, both of those little moments kind of stuck in my head as a bit disturbing because, again, and I think, JP, you and I have spoken about this in the past before. I mean, there was that weird moment where it was Ivanka, was meeting with leaders that Trump was supposed to meet with. And there was, speculation, why is she out there? And I speculated at the time, that, I don't know, Trump had some episode or he wasn't ready for prime time, so he sends out his daughter instead to give to have a meeting with business leaders that he was supposed to do. And it was sort of hastily prepared. So I don't know. I just wanted to throw that to you, JP. I know that's a lot of...
let's start from the end. Well, let's begin with the end of all of that, which is I can't say with any kind of confidence what is going on with him and his health and his mental state. It's only what we observe, and I know that we can observe clinical narcissism, and certainly we can observe a kind of sort of a weird kind of a narrative Tourette's, where it just, you know what I mean? It's not a physical Tourette's, but he just seems to be locked in on these same loops. He's almost like, if you watch Westworld, when they try to make a bad copy, or they try to make a copy of a human being and they put their consciousness in a machine and it turns out to be a bad copy and they just keep defaulting back to these same issues over and over again. There is that. We can observe that. I think what we will find is that as crazy a roller coaster as this has been to experience in real time, that once this administration is over, I wish I was at Random House, because you're going to make millions of dollars on all the tell-all books that are going to come out of this administration.
Yeah.
And they're going to have, it's going to be, what was his name? Michael Wolff's book,
right.
That hit really big, and then people started to blow it apart, and Michael Wolff started to look like a bit of a tool, and because he is a bit of a tool. And really he was kind of doing mouthpiece work for Steve Bannon when you look at it in retrospect. But we're going to find out a lot of these secrets. And so I would say, like the Mueller investigation, I'm just going to go with what we find out over time. I would say this, though. That was a Michael Avenatti moment. You notice he always says, let me say this, or I will say this. Anyway, Pisons. So the Ronnie Jackson episode, the White House physician who was going to become Surgeon General, and I don't know if you noticed, but it's completely disappeared once there was an official investigation underway, because that kind of tells you that there may have been a there. When he came out and said that Donald Trump could live to be 500 years old and all this other stuff.
Yeah.
The extent to which it was so histrionic in the other direction from what is observable, that is the fact that Donald Trump is kind of a bloated, overweight, junk food eating guy who drinks a lot of Diet Coke and seems to have some weird sort of physical aberrations about him. The fact that it went so far in the other direction seems to indicate that something is being covered up. I mean, that's just sort of how we respond to those things. When somebody is so grandiose in the other direction of what is observable reality, we tend to feel like somebody's hiding something. That's like you were pointing out with Hillary Clinton. Why not just come clean? When you don't come clean, people get suspicious. But let's just say that it was not a trans-ischemic attack or some other weird psychological or physiological issue. The thing about Syria that I find interesting is that Marcy Wheeler over at Empty Wheel has recently inserted herself into the Trump-Russia story in ways that I think are unusual for a journalist, because after years of being kind of a preeminent blogger on the intersection between surveillance and law, and being an opponent often in terms of what she's uncovering of the FBI and the intelligence community, she revealed that she actually became an informant of the intelligence community, because she had herself an informant who was feeding her a lot of information, who she said was then turned into something of a predator and somebody who was kind of dangerous to her. So she saw dangers to others from this person. And it all started with a text that she received about 12 hours after the election from this person who had been an informant up to that point and said, Flynn has been ordered to make plans to turn Syria over to Putin. And apparently this is the beginning of what was a series of events that has led to what we are seeing right now. And she's let some more information out over time, because people said, wait a minute, Marcy, what are you doing here? Margaret Sullivan wrote about it in the Washington Post. She's had a lot of criticism. Some people have come to her defense. And she's written a number of breadcrumb-laden posts. But I think Syria is a crucial aspect of what is a much larger geopolitical issue. Now, Syria has been a bit bedeviling for Donald Trump, because twice he's launched missiles into Syria, both times under quite specious circumstances, and both times the attacks were basically bogus attacks on prearranged targets that did almost no damage whatsoever. And the first time, Mattis admitted that the attack was completely coordinated with Russian military. And that was it was like an overpass looking parking spot for a plane that was hit.
Yeah, it was like empty too. There was nothing even there.
Then the second time, it was this building where supposedly there were chemical precursor capabilities in play.
Right.
That was basically because everything was telegraphed. That was there was nobody there. That was abandoned at that point when it hit. And so both of those attacks were designed more to either placate him or to give him the appearance to America and the world that he actually was on the case in Syria. Well, Syria is gone. I mean, the United States really does not have any influence at this point in Syria. The only thing that's left are some of these sort of Syrian Free Army guys who, whatever that is, that's like a conglomeration. Because there was a point like 18 months ago when stories came out that the CIA's guys were actually battling the Pentagon's guys on the battlefield. So, I mean, that's a complete disaster. The one real issue there are the Kurds. And the Kurds, the Peshmerga, did most of the heavy lifting in the fighting against the Islamic State. Particularly at the beginning. If it wasn't for the Kurds, the Islamic State may have gotten to Baghdad. So now the question is, to what extent is the United States going to once again sell out the Kurds? And the Kurds,
they already seem they already seem to be doing that, because they've now gotten back with Turkey and they're attacking various sites. That literally, they're attacking bases that the Pentagon helped build with the Kurds, along with the Turks. So that seems to be, once again, I don't know why the Kurds ever trust the U.S., but once again, they've been betrayed.
It's because Pat Robertson goes over there with the Christian Broadcasting Network and celebrates them, puts them on TV, and they feel like, if we get the evangelicals, we'll be like Israel.
Yeah,
Once we get the evangelicals, we'll always have a seat at the table. No, sorry, Kurds. No. This is a long way of getting to the idea that I think Syria is a almost primordial issue for Trump, if indeed part of what this Russiagate thing is going to involve over time is a quid pro quo to hand over Syria to Vladimir Putin. And if this Flynn thing works out, if that's where that's going, I could understand why Donald Trump gets a little gobbledygooked when he's talking about Syria, in no small part because it's not just the Flynn text that Marcy Wheeler got, or the text about Flynn. It wasn't Flynn texting. It was another informant who is yet to be revealed, who was working side by side with Flynn at the time. We don't know the name yet. But also, there's this other thing that's going on, which Adam Entus over at The New Yorker has been doing amazing work on, which is this incredible confluence of interests which touch down in the Seychelles. And that's Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, and Israel pulling in Russia to come up with a grand bargain for the Middle East, and they believe that the figurehead they needed to pull that bargain off was Donald Trump. And so, Bibi Netanyahu was in deep discussions with Vladimir Putin prior to Trump's meeting with Putin in Helsinki. That has been widely reported. And there is a great deal of evidence pointing to the fact that through Jared Kushner, Bibi Netanyahu is also exerting a great deal of influence on Middle East policy through him in Donald Trump's administration. And a lot of this has to do with what's going to happen with the Golan Heights and a deal to try and extricate Iranian forces out of Syria, and in the process, basically Syria would become a full-on client state, as if it never was, but a full-on client state once again of Russia under Vladimir Putin, and Vladimir Putin would then have secured in perpetuity his all-important warm water port on the Mediterranean. Now, I'm not saying any of this as a qualitative assessment. This is just a quantitative assessment. I'm just assessing the chessboard. Whether or not Russia deserves to have Syria, that's a question that anybody can answer for themselves. Syria has often in the past been in Russia's sort of satellite system, and since the United States has the Fifth Fleet lodged in the Persian Gulf, one could make a logical argument that Russia needs that counterbalance in the Mediterranean, or else it could be shut out of a number of different chessboards. So I think that there is a grand chessboard game that is going on that Donald Trump is only barely aware of. Now that's me making an assessment with very little actual evidence to it, but I have a feeling that Donald Trump is barely read in to some of these grander games that are going on behind him, because I look at people like Eric Prince, who was he was greasing the wheels on that Seychelles meeting, and what was Eric Prince doing right before Donald Trump went on his little NATO excursion and went to London? He was making the rounds in Europe again, pitching the idea that he could privatize the war in Afghanistan.
Right.
So you have him wanting to privatize the war in Afghanistan. I'll give you another set of interests. Since Donald Trump became president, oil has gone from hovering around $40 a barrel to hovering around $80 a barrel. I wonder if that would help Russia and Saudi Arabia. I think so, particularly since Russia has had a lot of problems with their economy, and because of sanctions and the inability to get a lot of sanctions relief, they need that oil revenue more than ever. Well, that oil revenue basically got a big boost out of Donald Trump's presidency. The pulling out of the Iran nuclear deal was great for a lot of people, including Russia. And oh, by the way, I would not put it past Russia to cut a deal that shivved Iran if it was in their best interest, because Vladimir Putin is doing what's in the best interest of Russia. So why not, right? I mean, Iran still sits at the center of all of this, as does oil, and that's why the United Arab Emirates and Saudi Arabia and Russia, all partially coordinated by Israel and certainly involving Eric Prince, decided we have this confluence of interests here, and the person who is most likely to maybe be easily manipulated, you don't have to fully read them in, the person who we could get the most out of is Donald Trump, and it all gets back to this linchpin of Syria.
Oh, and just to sort of add on to what you were saying there with the Syria stuff, and you're just mentioning Iran, and Iran briefly came up during this press conference where Putin sort of, said, oh, well, I think that Iran was, following the rules and, the IAEA inspections and all that stuff. But he didn't really criticize Donald Trump's decision to pull out of the Iran deal, which is interesting. And furthermore, Iran and Russia are not allies. They never really have been. And in terms of like pipeline politics, Russia does not want to see Iran flourish because Iran would be an even cheaper, better way to supply Europe and the rest of the world with natural gas.
Pierce,
and oil.
that is such a great point, and I've said this repeatedly over the course of the 20 years as it's come up, is that people think that in a very simplistic term often, if they haven't examined oil politics closely. And I understand it. It makes all the sense in the world because we go with basic supply and demand and all this stuff, right? And people think, oh, we want to go to country X to get their oil because our oil companies are greedy and they want to extract all the oil. Sometimes what you do is you go into a country to keep the oil in the ground.
Like Iraq.
Yes, you want that oil to stay there because you want to keep the price higher and extend the life of the resource. So, all of your listeners know this, right? There's Saddam Hussein. He's basically in compliance with UNSCOM, with the United Nations resolutions. He's about to be certified. As the certification is going forward, what does Bill Clinton do? He pulls out the inspectors, makes a big show about it. He launches some missiles, says, "Oh, we're not going to stand for it." Still, they're getting closer and closer to inspection, and then as they're getting closer and closer to having sanctions relief and being able to trade oil, Saddam Hussein says, maybe I'm not going to trade in dollars. And oh, by the way, I'm going to punish Saudi Arabia for what they did to us, because he blamed Saudi Arabia, and rightly so, for a lot of what he experienced as a result of the Gulf War, and said, I'm going to drive the price of oil into the dirt. And people forget that at the end of the Clinton administration, oil was like around $18 a barrel.
Yeah.
I wonder why the 90s, the Clinton economy was so good. Maybe it has something to do with all that oil that was cheap. I remember all those SUVs everybody was buying at the end of the 90s. So keeping Saddam's oil in the ground was of vital importance to maybe Saudi Arabia. Maybe that's why you had a bunch of hijackers in 9/11 who are Saudis. You start to wonder these things, because I'll be honest with you, this also traces back into Chechnya. Is that when I was at the Center for Defense Information as a defense policy researcher, one of my two areas of interest, one was what was going on with Taiwan and China, and the so-called rise of China, and the United States protect Taiwan from a cross-straits invasion, spending a lot of time on that. And the other thing, what was going on in the Caucasus region in Central Asia, and the first Chechen war, where Samil Basayev was leading a fundamentalist Muslim revolution against the collaborators with Moscow and against Russian forces. And there is a lot of evidence that the Saudis were funding that, and that was all happening at a time when the Caspian Sea oil and gas reserves were about to come online, and there was this idea that was being early funding for a pipeline from the Caspian Sea down through the Caucasus region, out into the Strait of Bosporus and into Mediterranean, so that all the Caspian oil and gas reserves would then be in the orbit of Europe and the EU, and it would be flooding the market at a time, again, when oil was around $18 a barrel. Would it be in Saudi Arabia's interest to keep that oil from coming online?
Yeah, absolutely. Again, like so many, big world events in geopolitics, it does come back to oil. And I'll throw one other thing about the, just because we're running out of time, and I just want to mention it, and I probably will expand on it later in another show, but this bizarre propping up of the MEK in a way that we've never previously seen, and Donald Trump is completely silent about all this, while his own lawyer, Rudy Giuliani, is going to Paris talking about regime change. Now the MEK and Bolton and the MEK and a whole host of other people. The MEK is now seen as a completely legitimate political organization, not the Marxist sex cult. And on top of that, there's this bizarre
sex cult. I'm sorry.
Plot.
You got me on that one.
There's this bizarre plot, supposedly a bomb plot that was going to go off in Paris. Again, they're going to target people within Trump's own administration. He doesn't say anything about it. And that's now expanded. And in Holland, we've had diplomats being mysteriously sent away. And I don't believe this for a second, that there's no reason Iran would want to do this. This is completely a CIA, MEK, just bogus, story. There's nothing there. There is no story to this.
CIA, that might actually be UAE and Saudi Arabia.
Sure, and Mossad. Who knows?
That's where I would go with it, because I actually think that in many ways those capabilities have waned significantly for the CIA since the Bush administration, W's administration, threw them over the bus and moved a lot of those capabilities over to the Defense Intelligence Agency and had those then outsourced to private corporations. The CIA is not. This is not the CIA of Allen Dulles and Dick Helms. You know what I mean? This CIA has been curtailed, and a lot of those things have moved off into the the realm of defense contractors and private intelligence contractors.
Yes. Just to throw it out there, there is this strange brewing there is this storyline slowly developing in Europe that Iran has sleeper agents all over Europe that are trying to take down the MEK and Maryam Rajavi, the leader of this destructive cult, whose husband has not been seen in public in like 25 years, but he's like Shelley Miscavige. For people, who understand Scientology, he's still there.
Two big laughs there today, Pierce.
Yeah, but he hasn't been seen in public. But don't worry, he's okay. He's doing good. He's just working on, for when the MEK, marches into Tehran. But
Trump has actually said a couple things. He said things have changed significantly inside Iran. Iran has changed big time. They have all kinds of protests. They're not harassing our ships anymore, but they have all kinds of protests. There's all kinds of unrest. Things are really bad. And to me, that is a predicate being set for saying, look at all the unrest we're causing by our sanctions. And so when the internal revolution happens, it will all seem like a logical, organic event.
Absolutely. No, 100%. That is, and again, I mentioned this before. Protests happen regularly within Iran. They are not, the government allows for them to happen. And very quickly, though, we've seen these protests that are happening about legitimate economic problems, many of which are caused by the United States. But that aside, legitimate economic problems with the regime are then immediately hijacked by the MEK, and then suddenly you get these strange, snipers on roofs. But anyway, we are at the end of the show. I want to thank JP Sottile of newsvandal.com for joining me, and we're talking with Aaron Franz in the second hour.
All right, take care, man.
basically narcotics.
Freedom.
Oh, yes, I like very much.
Radio.
You're an American institution.
American Freedom Radio.
Simply Clean Foods is dedicated to providing the best quality food you can buy next to fresh from a farmer's market. Our stringent quality controls and absolute zero GMOs plus testing for heavy metals makes us unique in the storable foods market. Our line of fruits, vegetables, and meats are suitable for everyday use, and you won't have to worry about throwing away valuable groceries ever again. Take out the amount you need and reseal the package for use within the next 6 months. Simply Clean Foods' primary focus is to bring clean food to people all around the world and change the way we look at freeze-dried food in our daily cooking. Go to simplycleanfoods.net. That's www.simplycleanfoods.net today.
American Survival Wholesale is a proud sponsor of the American Freedom Radio. And when you purchase quality products from AmericanSurvivalWholesale.com, you help support this program. Our quality non-GMO foods do not contain MSG, high fructose corn syrup, or heavy metals. At American Survival Wholesale, you can choose from over 8,000 quality products, including self-defense weapons, bug-out bags, and long-term storable food at wholesale prices. We also have custom food packs available, including gluten-free, dairy-free, and vegetarian packs. If we don't have it, you don't need it. American Survival Wholesale is a veteran-owned and operated company which also supports our veterans in need, and we are very active in disaster relief. If you would like to become a distributor, please email us at bugoutamerica@usa.com or call 818-720-0759. We offer free consultations to answer all your questions. Do it today while things are calm. That's AmericanSurvivalWholesale.com.
I don't like words that hide the truth. I don't like words that conceal reality. I don't like euphemisms. And American English is loaded with euphemisms. Because Americans have a lot of trouble dealing with reality. Americans have trouble facing the truth. So they invent a kind of a soft language to protect themselves from it. I'll give you an example of that. When I was a little kid, if I got sick, they wanted me to go to the hospital and see the doctor. Now they want me to go to a health maintenance organization. Smug, greedy, well-fed white people have invented a language to conceal their sins. It's as simple as that. The CIA doesn't kill anybody anymore. They neutralize people. The government doesn't lie. It engages in disinformation. Israeli murderers are called commandos. Arab commandos are called terrorists. Contra killers are called freedom fighters. Well, if crime fighters fight crime and firefighters fight fire, what do freedom fighters fight? They never mention that part of it to us, do they? Never mention that part of it.
You're listening to AmericanFreedomRadio.com, the network who perseveres in delivering intelligent debate, constructive dialogue with true independence. The freedom to broadcast the truth is not free at all. So what is American Freedom Radio worth to you? The empowering information with fun, honest and pure integrity behind it provides an example to follow. Friendships to flourish with the moral altruism that pulls no punches. The hosts sacrifice and show remarkable discipline in their duty to deliver quality radio in service to the community with strength, wisdom and loyalty. The founders of AFR wish to thank you personally for sharing your views and insights to make the best radio and alternative media. Now it's time for you to give something back and play a vital role in the future of America. Be as generous with us as we've been with you. Click on the donate banner at AmericanFreedomRadio.com or volunteer by emailing AmericanFreedomRadio.com. Vaccine, psychotropic drugs and artillery batteries not included.
Launch sequence initiated.
We're now in the approach phase. Everything looking good. Control the all out. Control is good. 5. Roger, copy. 3. 2.5. 2. 1. Engage.
Prepare your mind to experience American Freedom Radio.
Porkins Policy Radio, offering a unique perspective on everything. Geopolitics, culture creation, the reality of the world we live in. Coming to you live from New York City, your host, Pierce Redmond.
Okay, everybody, welcome back to Porkins Policy Radio. As always, I am your host, Pierce Redmond, and if you are joining us here in the second hour, we are joined by good friend of the show, Aaron Franz, the man behind Transresistor Radio, Uncle the podcast, and also Themes and Memes. You can find all of Aaron's work at theageoftransitions.com. Aaron Franz, how are you?
Very good. Thanks for having me back here, Pierce.
Absolutely. No, I'm glad to be talking with you again. We had a fun time the last time we were talking, and I'm glad that we're recording more together. And I think in part that's because you are, of course, now doing your own live radio show. So you understand the trials and tribulations of doing live radio, and I was literally texting Aaron yesterday, which is like the worst. I hate when people do that. I emailed Aaron in the morning and then texted him to see if he got my email. But he did.
Yeah.
And I've got Aaron with me today, and I thought this would be we were kind of dealing in the first hour with some heavy topics and geopolitics and things like that, and I thought that we could kind of switch gears a little bit in the second hour with you, Aaron, because I always like kind of having a bit more fun with you on the show. Oh, you know what I should mention? Just before that, we if people haven't listened, we recorded a joint bonus podcast for both of our listeners on Patreon, all about the fantastic film David Wants to Fly by David Sievking, or Young David, as Aaron and I called him in the episode. Which is a great documentary. I think we did an excellent job in that episode. I'm very proud of it, talking about the TM movement and the cult that it is and David Lynch. So just a little plug for that. If people haven't listened, I highly encourage them to go and watch the movie first, and then make all of your friends watch the movie because it's a very important film, and then listen to our show on that. But we had a lot of fun when we recorded that, and I thought we could have a little bit of fun here in the second hour. I was talking with in the first hour with JP about how wonderful it was. I was away for a wedding with my girlfriend, and we had a little mini vacation as well, and it was so great. I didn't check Twitter at all. I wasn't really up on news or anything like that. I was fully enjoying myself, and then to come back to Trump and all of this sort of horrific crap in the news, I thought we could kind of make it a little bit light. And we're talking about something that, Aaron, both of us have, I think we discussed him recently. Maybe it was on my show, but it might have been on your show. Elon Musk, of course, the I guess founder of Tesla, the CEO of Boring Company. That's his company's name. One of the PayPal mafia. And Aaron, I would say you're a bit more of an Elon Musk expert, and you've actually you did a show not that long ago all about Tesla.
Yeah.
So I guess let's just sort of dive into why are we talking about Elon Musk? What did he do most recently that sort of made headlines? Because this is he also seems to make he's like Donald Trump in terms of his power with Twitter and his 240 characters or 280 characters. He has the power of Donald Trump in that Elon Musk can spew out a bunch of nonsense on Twitter, and literally the entire news cycle gets hijacked by Elon Musk. So what did Elon do most recently, Aaron, that is making us spend a whole show talking about him?
Well, I'll just say first that I don't consider myself an expert on Elon Musk, but I'm very interested in what he does and all the the areas of his interest overlap with the things that I like to look into. And I'll also say that a mutual Twitter friend of ours, Artisan Loaf, Artisan Loaf, guy named Nick, recently came on my show to talk a lot about he was a guest on Transresistor Radio and also Uncle the podcast, where both hours he spent really getting into a lot of detail about Musk and Tesla. And I'd say that Nick is definitely an expert on Elon Musk. So I would recommend people follow him on Twitter again at Artisan Loaf if they want really good insight into this interesting character. And yeah, Elon Musk. Okay, we all know who he is, but what is this most recent thing? I knew of this event, which is the Thailand incident with the boys who were stuck in the cave. That was the big news story, the world news story. That was huge. Like,
sure.
What was that, a week and a half ago? Is that how long that was?
And it was like the Chilean miners, it's this it's sort of like a positive story in a lot of ways.
Sort of. It's one of those stories that's positive in like the humanitarian aspect of it, but it's also like it's a suspense. It's suspenseful, and it's also terrifying because these children's lives are in danger, right?
Yeah.
So it keeps you on the hook and tuned in to see what the next development is, because these poor kids are stuck in there, of course. So everybody's instantly concerned about it. So yeah, exactly the same thing with the Chilean miner incident. So these stories pop up from time to time, and so when you have a story like that everybody's focusing on, it's an opportunity if you can get in there and somehow attach yourself to that story. It's a way to get attention for yourself. And the criticism of what Elon Musk did in this situation would be that that's exactly what he's doing. He came in and said, okay, I'm going to help out. I don't know if they asked him first or if he suggested it himself. Maybe you know this, Pierce, but the idea was that he and his team of like Tesla engineers would design this mini submarine to go into the underwater cave, get the boys, put them in the submarine or on it or wherever, and it would extract them. So the technology that they developed very quickly for that specific purpose was going to save these boys. Now, do you know if they asked him or if he inserted himself? Because I don't know.
I need to find it. I was reading an article earlier this morning where you could probably find it if you go to Elon Musk's Twitter page. But he's produced emails showing that he was in contact with some of the people that were involved in this rescue operation of these like 12 young boys, soccer players, and their coach that were trapped in this cave. So he and I think this was sort of like in reference to he was like attacking one of the guys that was called not the main guy who we'll get to, Vern Unsworth. It wasn't even that. He was attacking another person who the media I guess dubbed as like the leader, and Musk said no, he wasn't the real leader because look at my emails, I was talking with the real leader and he was really into my submarine. And again, that might be true. I kind of doubt that that these guys were like, you know what, we need to someone's got to email Elon Musk and see if he's got some sort of a submarine that he's developed, and if he can send his SpaceX employees, because that's what Musk was offering, to come. There's no way. He had to have contacted them. Now, I don't know. Prove me wrong, Elon, if you're listening. But I don't really believe that that's how the chain of events went. But yeah, he was nonetheless. He does appear to have been in contact, because again, this guy that I guess we should get to it if people don't know. One of the divers that was actually fairly instrumental in helping to rescue the soccer players and the coach is a British national, Vern Unsworth. I believe that is his name. I should, of course, have it up right in front of me. Yes, Vern Unsworth. He criticized Elon Musk, and he probably rightfully kind of called him out and said this is a PR stunt. The submarine will never work. Given the structure of the cave. And also, we should point out, too, that it wasn't just that Elon Musk was going to send this submarine into the caves. He had this, really kind of, insane... if you're an engineer, you always want to go for, simplicity, when you're building something. And this is like the most overly complicated, job to engineer. But he was going to like insert these nylon tubes that were like 3 feet in diameter that would be, I don't know, fed through this cave network and somehow like pump out water into somewhere else so that they could, I guess, get some of the water out of some of the caves. I don't know quite how that was going to work with the submarine, which would require itself to be completely submerged, I believe, to actually work. But that was part of it. And, this guy Vern Unsworth, and he's not the only expert, we'll point to some other experts, basically said this is like, this is insane. This is a PR stunt. And then Elon Musk tweeted, because he was saying, well, I'll show you the video or whatever that this would work. And then he tweeted, quote, you know what? Don't bother showing the video. We will make one of the mini sub/pod going all the way to Cave 5, no problemo. Sorry, pedo guy, you really did ask for it. And then when a Twitter follower of Musk's asked, oh, sorry, he's calling the guy who found the children a pedo real classy, Elon Musk tweeted, quote, betcha a signed dollar it's true. Now, he has since deleted these tweets, which is like so lame. It's like, if you're going to say something stupid, just own it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, totally. I agree. Yeah.
And like, full disclosure, I have deleted tweets, but only, I've deleted 2 types of tweets in my whole life. One was when I made spelling mistakes, and I just kind of hate, and there were spelling mistakes on tweets I knew, like, oh, I'm going to get some retweets on this. So and I don't want to retweet like dumb spelling mistakes. And the other one was just like a stupid like New World Order tweet or something about like Heineken. Heineken had some like bottle with like the world as like one, as like the Heineken star. And this was like, early in my conspiracy days, and I said something silly about like the New World Order, and maybe one about Alex, like I found $1 that had like Infowars.com. And I deleted them like just before I went on a date with this girl that I had just met, and I was like, well, if she's like me, she's gonna stalk my Twitter account, and I don't know if So, but I'm admitting that but usually I don't delete tweets, especially if I say something stupid. Except in those 2 cases. But either way, the damage has been done. I also don't have 22 million followers. So there we go, though, right? Aaron, what is going on here?
Yeah, it's the usual with Elon Musk, and again, we don't know for sure whether they asked him for help or he again inserted himself into the situation. But if I were to venture a guess, he just inserted himself in there. And yes, the reason being that it's a perfect PR move, which he always makes. He's always doing this. He's always being sensational. He's always like making these wild claims that it doesn't matter if he can back them up or not. It's just he's building a cult of personality around himself. And he's also... he himself and his brand is tied directly into the Tesla brand. So they're really essentially one and the same thing. And the big push, big part of that branding is this savior, liberator sort of thing. Like Elon Musk and Tesla are doing the good work that's going to save the planet. And that's his thing. So whenever he's able to, he tries to paint himself as like the savior of humanity. This very much the sort of Christ sort of. He's made himself like a Christ kind of figure in a way. I don't know if anybody's really compared him to that, but a lot of people actually do that.
They worship him.
Yeah, exactly. He is certainly he's a demigod among his fans, and it's interesting just to see his fan base. And again, it's kind of weird to say a fan base, but really that's what it is. Are these people who are drinking the Flavor Aid, so to speak, right?
yeah.
Right, because they hang on his every word. They're the types that they'll defend him to the end. Where most people are going to be like, okay, they're going to be a little savvy about this, and probably, the most reasonable of all people probably won't jump to either side. They'll be like, well, this could be Elon Musk just kind of like looking for publicity, or maybe it's not. I think that's probably where the normal person is and should be, like with some skepticism, but like not sure of themselves. Mm-hmm. But of course the fanboys are like, oh yeah, he's saving the earth. You're an idiot if you criticize him. You can't criticize him. Tesla is again, just the and Artisan Loaf Nick was pointing out that the company is financially not even sound, and that he's covering that up too.
Oh, and yeah, like entirely.
Yeah, so that's a fascinating aspect to jump into as well. So, he's just building up a cult of personality, really. That's what he's doing.
Oh, and we'll point out again that the Tesla stock, and again, I'm not like an expert or anything, but by and large, Tesla stock is always volatile. Like, it always goes up and down. So that's, if you follow like financial news, they're always sort of, be careful investing your money, or just know that it's going to go up and down. But it's been going down quite a bit lately, and it dropped another 3% just after this tweet alone. And now, his investors are asking for an apology from Elon Musk. They're now, because that's the other thing too. Tesla it's not they still require cash from investors. Like, they've never turned a profit, and to my knowledge, they've not even broken even on, they're only losing money. Yes. And they have yet to prove that Tesla, the car, is like really, something that it can work. It's not like a Prius, or some of the other hybrid cars, or, I guess Tesla is fully electric, right?
Yes, they're full electrics, and that's a whole other technical aspect of the cars, full electrics, hybrids, et cetera, et cetera. But yeah, the company is not fiscally sound. It has not ever been. And again, they solicit all these donations. It's like crowdfunding their next model. It's basically what they're doing, which is bizarre for an automobile company to do, right. But that's what they've been doing.
Yeah. No, and there's also there's a legal battle going on right now with like a former Tesla technician who I believe has actually gone to the Securities and Exchange Commission, alleging that the Tesla has like lied to investors and used dangerous batteries, and he's requesting like corporate whistleblower status. And this is also coming out on the heels of, I guess, a news flash that Elon Musk donates to the Republicans, which is, oh my God, I'm shocked to find gambling going on.
Yeah.
And it's just like, of course, first of all of these guys do, if you're really, and I think that's more or less what he stated was like, well, we give money to both parties, but I give more to, he kept using the word humanitarian thing. I'm a humanitarian. That's what he kept reiterating.
His big retort to this was that he donates so much money to the Sierra Club. Again,
right.
It's what is their mission? They're saving the world from climate change, which he explicitly says. It's like, I've donated all this money to save the world from climate change via the Sierra Club, and my donations to the Republican Party were like 0.05% as much as my donations to the Sierra Club. So there. That's what he said.
Yeah, right, exactly.
Yeah.
Which is just such a lame response. Also, too, I find it funny of a lot of these like Silicon Valley like tech bros and Elon Musk type people talking about the environment, and there's like nothing green at all about Silicon Valley. There's nothing green about like just looking at from a like the most basic level, all of the minerals and metals required to create computers is like horrible for the environment, and also just for like people, like the sort of like squalid warlike state of like Congo is like a direct influence because of the need for tungsten, coltan, and all of these gold. I mean, people forget that gold is used in a lot of these things. I mean, so there's nothing green or nice about any of this.
It's very comparable to the diamond trade.
Yes.
Very similar. People are well aware of that. Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, don't oh wow, he gives money to the Sierra Club, but again, that's like it's sort of like Leonardo DiCaprio, taking a private jet everywhere to accept awards for being green from the UN, and it's like. Like the whole carbon offsets, well, I know my carbon footprint's bad, so I planted a few trees in my neighborhood park, so I can have a clean conscience. Now, I guess we should just point out that first off, Musk, to my knowledge, has zero evidence for what he's alleging that poor Vern Unsworth is a pedo. I believe his only real evidence is that he's a white guy who lives in Thailand and he wanted to rescue young boys. I guess to ultimately to molest them later, which is what all great pedos do. Yeah. I mean, it's like, where is the logic to any of this?
Yeah.
And Vern Unsworth is now consulting with lawyers to see if he can sue for libel. And I mean, I have a little bit of an issue with some of the way that libel laws in the UK can be used and stuff. But this is also Elon Musk just blasting out to 22 million people plus everyone that retweeted him that this guy he's never met is a pedophile. I mean, it's pretty crazy. And Aaron, this is what I wanted to kind of throw to you, and I was talking about this in the emails when we were discussing this, is Elon Musk is, like you said before, he's sort of like this Christ-like figure to certain people, and this sort of cult of personality. And I think in Elon Musk's mind, he is like a hero in the comic book sense. He is, in his mind, he views himself almost like an Iron Man, like a Tony Stark kind of a person, who maybe did some shady stuff back, in the early days of PayPal. He's sort of, he's not like Peter Thiel. He's always one to kind of make mention of that, even though I'm sure they're still close. And he doesn't like Donald Trump. He's the good guy. Elon is always warning us about AI, and like Iron Man, he's going to use his billions to make submarines to rescue soccer players. But at the end of the day, I kind of see him as he's really like our modern day super villain. He's just like this whiny asshole who doesn't like that someone makes fun of his idiotic and if you watch the video of him with the submarine, there's no way this thing was going to make it. At all. I mean, it's impossible. And his video, proving that they would make it, is they're in a pool. First off, the pool it's super bright. It's like sunny California pool.
It's in Los Angeles. Yeah,
exactly. As opposed to a dark, a pitch black cave in Thailand. Okay, and they go under basically what look like just a few metal rods. There's no top. It's not like they went under something with a roof. So it's of course it looks good doing that. And they go under something that's maybe 5 feet. Yeah. So he gets angry about that and then, calls this guy a pedo. And it just throws a little hissy fit. So I don't know, Aaron, what's your take on Elon Musk as a modern day hero or villain in today's world?
Yeah, that's a good analogy, good metaphor, whatever. I mean, it works. He's definitely, he could be either one. I think he's both. And again, it depends on where you are on Musk, because really he's one of these divisive figures where you either love him or you hate him. I was talking about the regular person that's kind of on the fence before, but it really, I mean, he's out there to solicit love and hate, which are, extreme reactions, which are a good thing for garnering attention. Right. If you want to garner attention, it doesn't matter if it's a good reaction or a bad reaction, just as long as the reaction's strong. That's what sticks. That's what makes people remember. People remember these things, and you'd when you exert such strong emotions and you put so much emotional energy into something that stays with you. And, I mean, there's an occult aspect of this, too. There's an occult aspect to public relations that people don't typically pay homage to. I've mentioned this before. If you read Edward Bernays' seminal work, Propaganda, the famous book, which you should read, everybody should read that, it begins and ends that book with a version of Order Out of Chaos. Like it's either, I think, like the first chapter name is like some version of Order Out of Chaos, and then like the last line of the book is another, like, it doesn't say exactly Order Out of Chaos, but in some way it says that, So, Bernays begins and ends his book on Propaganda, which is like the birth book of modern day public relations, with this occult phrase, Order Out of Chaos. And you'll notice if you follow Musk's Twitter feed, he puts little occult things in there too. Like I shared that one with you about the crown chakra, when somebody asked why he was, or how he got to be so successful. He just replied by saying, well, I worked real hard on developing my crown chakra. And then people were, of course, replying to that. And then later in that thread, he was like, don't underestimate the power of chakras, which, he's kind of being like cute and funny there, but at the same time, he's serious about this stuff. I really believe, and he's a guy who knows what he's doing, as Trump is as well. I mean, you liken him to Trump. They're similar in their ability to garner these visceral reactions from people in order to bolster their own cult of personality. And also, likewise, with both of them, it doesn't really matter to them even what it is that they're doing. It just matters the way they're talking about it and the perceptions that everybody else has about that. If they can convince a large enough section of the population that all of the fantasies they're spewing out on Twitter are real, well, that's pretty powerful. And that's, again, if you're talking about a cult, I'd say that's akin to black magic, is using, amplifying the power of your subjective reality to a wider audience and literally changing the world as a result of that. So there you go.
Yeah, and it should be no surprise that Elon Musk is, I don't know if is like an expert in occult practices, but certainly a lot of people in Silicon Valley, in the tech world, are understand the significance of some of that stuff. I'm sure Elon Musk is always working on his chakras and stuff like that. But it's funny too. You're talking about the Donald Trump thing, because I always sort of wonder with Elon Musk, like, is he truly serious when he says and does these? Like, was he really that upset, about his submarine thing, or is this just a very, to sort of go back to Edward Bernays, a very clever public relations? I mean, I don't know if it's clever really in this sense, because now there's such pushback that, he's going to have to apologize.
Yeah.
Or you could see him getting ousted from his own company. And maybe that's his plan, and then to come back like a Steve Jobs and resurrect it, and turn it into something later on, and become the evil overlord that he was always meant to be. I don't know, but I just always wonder with Musk if he is really, if he really believes his own BS. Like, has he drunken from his own Flavor Aid? You know what I mean? Like,
yeah. And
you wonder with these sort of like crazy billionaires, it's like they must live in such a bubble. Like, it's funny. Elon Musk is obviously people like him are parodied in the show Silicon Valley. And while there's no one that's like quite like an Elon Musk, Peter Thiel is parodied in the first season of Silicon Valley amazingly well. And the Gavin Belson character in the show is kind of like an Elon Musk type, but he's more like Larry Ellison, the CEO of Oracle.
Yeah.
But Elon Musk, of course, was asked his opinion I think he went to like one of the premieres of Silicon Valley, and there are people, there are people from the tech industry that are in the, like some of the people from Google. I think the original CEOs of Google are in an episode, and he was asked about it, and he said, he didn't like it. And he said, the parties that we throw in the Valley are crazier than you could ever imagine. And, that show is so lame. And it's like, that made me it's like, you really can't take a joke, can you?
Yeah.
And just because they're parodying you doesn't mean that they're like attacking you. You know what I mean? Like it's satire, which in a lot of ways is sort of like a compliment, or like Weird Al Yankovic, to bring him up.
Yeah.
He would always say, I love all of the songs that I do parodies of. I love, like they're some of my favorite songs, and like that's my form of like flattery.
Yeah.
To people that can't take that seriously. And, it's like you see some of the CEOs in the TV show. I don't know if you've seen it, Aaron. But
no, I need to.
You should watch it. You'd love it. They live in such a bubble that like they truly can't understand that people would hate them. And I wonder if that's like Elon Musk. He's like, he lives in such an ivory tower that he's just so like unaware. He's so removed from reality. And I guess to bring this to a more serious note, that's a really terrifying thing when you have someone that rich and seemingly powerful to be that removed from reality, because it will eventually be the Elon Musks and the Peter Thiels, the Larry Ellisons of the, like, they will eventually like rule the world. That's how I see it. Just because, like they're already kind of at the forefront of all of that stuff, and in terms of like technology and with national security and agriculture, all of these things are sort of being driven by these technological advances. And I don't know, Aaron, what's your thought on that? Because like while Elon Musk kind of looks like a fool a lot of the time, I don't know, on some level I'm kind of like terrified by him as well, because he just has so much disposable income and seems so driven to he has to be the savior. So I guess, Aaron, talk about the sort of like savior complex, how that can be so dangerous.
Sure. Well, we don't know obviously what's going through his head or exactly where he's coming from. We can only speculate on that. I mean, certain things we can kind of figure out, but we don't know what's going on in his head. I mean, we can see that he's certainly an egomaniac. I mean, that's pretty clear. Yeah. He's very much that's so. But I mean, what does that even mean? One of his responses to this Twitter storm of his version of Pedogate or whatever this is called, one of his responses was, somebody called him a narcissist. He's like, I may be a narcissist, but I'm a useful narcissist. And he goes on like, I employ this many thousands of people directly and this many more hundreds of thousands indirectly. And again, like, I'm doing all this great thing. I support all these families. I give to the Sierra Club, blah, 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 blah. Again, it's like, definitely you're right. He cannot take criticism, and oddly enough, the satire aspect, he can't take that either, which is he can't be, I would probably argue the point here that he can't be that much in tune with occult things if he's not like kind of going with the satire thing, because that, if anything, that's just like giving him more power and more attention. But his ego is so fragile he can't handle that. So, I mean, there's lots of things to consider here. There was something else that I wanted to mention here. It's slipping my mind now, though. It's unfortunately, I can't. There was something I really wanted to say. I forget. It's killing me now.
Well, hopefully it'll pop back in. I'll make another just a weird parallel. I mean, again, he is so much like Donald Trump in that sense. Like, Trump really can't take it. Now I think back in the day, Trump was able to sort of take a joke a little bit more, but as his ego became more and more inflated, and he became more and more narcissistic, he couldn't take that joke. Because everyone has seen those old video clips where I think Jimmy Fallon is like touching his hair, and he would he kind of makes fun of his hair to some extent. You know, he most recently, made fun of his hair when a protester at a rally in Ohio, I believe, or Cincinnati, maybe.
That's Ohio, yeah.
Oh, it is, right? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, for sure.
I think it was in Cincinnati. It held up a sign of Donald Trump and Jeffrey Epstein with the caption, "Who is Jeffrey Epstein?" And Trump, of course, got very upset, and they manhandled him out of there. And he did make a comment. You know, he made fun of that guy's hair, saying that it was too long. He couldn't tell it was longer than his, and he couldn't tell if he was a boy or a girl. Which is like, okay, Don. But he did all those rumors that he hated the SNL impersonations of him and whatnot. And it's just like Musk. And it's so funny that the two of them kind of like portray themselves as, to get kind of like a cult maybe with this, but they portray themselves as these like polar opposites, right? You know, Donald Trump is the evil billionaire who's, working with the Russians. Elon Musk is the benevolent billionaire that's going to bring us to Mars, and we're going to colonize Mars and blah, blah, blah. It's all going to be wonderful. And maybe we should get into some of the Mars stuff for a minute. But
sure.
Ultimately they're like the same person. You know what I mean? They are two sides of the same coin, and I think their ultimate goals are exactly the same. If Elon Musk could be the emperor of America or the world, he would. In much the same way that Donald Trump would.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah, I mean, this is very much another example of hyper-reality and how we're all kind of at fault for all this, for buying into this, and for making this the state of our world now, and some, I mean, this whole news item is basically, it revolves around Twitter and primarily what Musk said on Twitter. I mean, that's where we are. I mean, even you and I are participating in this, but I mean, it's like, this is where we are. We're like living in this virtual world where we're trying to interpret our idea of whatever reality actually is based on these weird things that people are saying. Those things that they're saying, I mean, God knows what even like is going through the heads of these maniacs saying them, Mm-hmm. So it's very strange, and it's influenced by fiction too. I mean, that's the Marvel movies being so big now. I mean, people are thinking in terms of these movies, in within the framework that these works of fiction work within. I would argue is that we've watched so many Marvel movies, we kind of want the characters in them to be real. And of course, any fictional, any good piece of fiction does that well. It draws on real aspects of our world. But where's life and life imitating art? That idea, it's life and art are intertwining so closely now that you can't really like. The dividing line on where you stand, like, life influences art. No, art influences life. Well, of course it goes both ways. But when you're in the virtual world, so to speak, more and more, and of course we're talking about Silicon Valley here, and that's from whence it came. These guys created this. We're in it, and now Elon Musk may be playing with fire, and the fire is getting to his head. But this is, we're all involved in this as well. So this is crazy.
No, I like you brought up the sort of like hyper reality of this, because I think, like you said, it plays so much into that where we are so inundated with these freaking Marvel movies. I mean, there's like a new one every month, and they've become this sort of like larger than life aspect of like film and pop culture. And that is, and of course that's sort of, now you get all of these like fake nerds out there who are like, yeah, I'm really, I'm just such a nerd. And it's like, no, you're not. You're like an attractive person who was never bullied, for being into science fiction or fantasy. But you've just seen all the Avenger movies, like that does not qualify you to be a nerd. Like, you're not into anime, you don't cosplay, you're not.
Get back to me when you can spout off some quotes from Doctor Who Then we
right,
can talk.
Exactly. Yes, I know. It's like, have you seen every episode of the Battlestar Galactica reboot or the original? Are you actually reading any new science fiction or fantasy? But it's permeated to such a level where like you said, it's indistinguishable, and we see these like figures like Elon Musk. I mean, I made the same comparison. He's Tony Stark from Iron Man, and I'm sort of, other people have said that. It's not like and the first, lots of people were saying that. But there is that thing where it's like you can't really tell the difference, between these Marvel movies, and it's like, and of course there's like Marvel movie, like some of the stuff that Musk is talking about are like on par with the technology of the Marvel films, and like I was mentioning the whole like, he's going to save us, he's going to bring us to Mars, which is so insane of an idea. Like the sort of like logistics of that, like how would you even build something on Mars? You know what I mean? Is like nobody asked that question, let alone the fact that like there's not the gravity is wildly different. Like how do you compensate for that? Mm-hmm. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And why just go there to begin with? Again, it's this again, it's a fantasy from science fiction. Yeah. Like we've seen it in the movies so much, we need to do it now because that represents progress. Right. Like progress isn't fixing our problems here and like, really getting things in order. Although Musk is certainly drawing on that too, like he's saving the Earth from climate change and all that, the electric cars. But again, you have to believe his version of the story that he's actually doing that, which when you dig into it, he really isn't. Well, no,
of course he wants to. Yeah, he's all about, we've got to stop the climate change and stuff. So let's go to Mars and destroy that planet.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, there'd be so much pollution. And just to quickly on the Mars thing, and to sort of puff up my bona fides with science fiction and being a nerd, there's a great series of novels. It's called The Expanse. Is this novel series? And it's like I think there's 7 or 8 books out right now. There's a TV show as well, but that takes place in the far future. But it is very based in like the reality of like what it would be like to live on Mars or to live in like the asteroid belt where there's very little gravity, and like people are physically different, and like they are, they become so adjusted to that type of gravity that like the people, if we colonize Mars, they would never be able to come to Earth, like ever, because the gravity would be so intense on their bone structure. And you see that in this book series, The Expanse, where people from the belt are tortured in in a way just by basically bringing them to places like Earth where the gravity is way different. They become long, and they're very tall, they're very slender. So it's just like all those sort of things like never really enter. It's just like Elon Musk is just like you say, we're gonna colonize Mars, we're gonna save the world. And jump in here.
You know what? I remember what I wanted to mention before, and it feeds right into this like hyper-reality idea, and also definitely Silicon Valley, and of course Peter Thiel is one of the guys that's instrumental in pushing the idea of transhumanism forward, right? He's the big guy that funds Singularity University and all these other things. So, I mean, that's where the popular ideas of transhumanism come from, which are very much just, the codifying of all these ideas from science fiction and making them like a bona fide philosophy and goal for people to, like a social goal for people to go after. But there was a very interesting article recently written by Douglas Rushkoff where he gives a lot of these speeches on technology, and he got commissioned to do this one where he said he assumed it was going to be to about 100 or so investment bankers, but it ended up just being like 5 guys, which were people he described as being super rich, like guys from like that ran hedge funds and stuff, he said. And he was just sitting around a table with them where they were asking him questions about his advice on what they should do when this, what they referred to as an event, happens. Which would be like an event which triggers like Armageddon, where the economy crashes and everybody's out in the streets killing themselves. And
There's
these
no more oil.
Yeah, something like that. We all know, we understand that, right? Okay, but these guys really believe that this is coming, and beyond that, they're already making plans to survive it. Like, these guys literally have like these bomb shelters. They have security forces that they pay. They've got stored food, like they've got all that stuff. I mean, you talk about preppers. These guys are like the ultimate preppers, and they very much believe this is happening. And they're asking Rushkoff questions like, well, how do I ensure that my security guys don't turn on me and murder me, and that they keep saving me from the angry mob outside of the perimeter of my bomb shelter or whatever? These were the questions they were asking him. And it also fed into like the transhuman aspect. These guys want to survive and like gain all these technologies. After everybody else has died out, they're going to be the guys who are left standing. You see.
Jesus.
So it's fascinating. I mean, that's just a perfect illustration of, we talk about the average person, and like, does the average person believe all the nonsense that Elon Musk puts out there, or do they believe in the ideas of transhumanism? Is that legitimate? Do they believe the catastrophic concepts from like conspiracy culture and the things like Alex Jones would talk about the total collapse of the economy? Well, I'll tell you one thing: these big shots sure believe it. So I mean, they may be insane, but they're rich and insane. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. Well, and it's funny you just bringing in the sort of, the Alex Jones apocalyptic conspiracy theory stuff, and I actually think that most of these like the that's what struck me with the Elon Musk thing. And I saw a little bit of it, and I was surprised there wasn't more of a, we mentioned the sort of Pedogate, Pizzagate thing. I'm sure that's exactly what Elon Musk was trying to tap into.
Oh, yeah.
Especially using the term pedo instead of pedophile. He clearly understands that a vast majority of course, people that follow him are actually the opposite of the people that he attempts to sort of portray himself to. That's the thing that's so funny. The people that were getting all sort of bent out of shape, oh my God, Elon Musk he's not an environmentalist? No, of course not. Okay, he appeals to like right wing kind of like Ayn Rand, alpha male assholes, who buy into all sorts of nonsense, and into sort of like they love the sort of like fear porn apocalyptic Alex Jones, the world is going to collapse. That sort of a mentality. And I think that's probably closer to what Elon Musk is really about. But I was half expecting him to be, for people to be like, well, if Elon Musk said it, it must be true. This must be like the next, iteration of Pedogate. It's like what was really going on in those tunnels. That's where I thought this was going to go. I mean, I'm not saying that I want it to, or that I hope that it does that, but that was my initial kind of assumption.
Well, there's probably a thread on 58chan on this very subject that's gone into great detail about this.
No, absolutely. I'm sure. No, actually, yeah. I'm sure you're right. I mean, if we go to 4chan or 8chan. 8chan.
I rely on all my like Chan, 4chan, 8chan news from like you and Robbie Martin are always talking about.
Yeah.
I've never got these sites. I'm like, because I knew 4chan, and then one of you has mentioned 8chan. I'm like, man, how many Chans are there?
Yeah, and then there's 2chan, which is really more I believe is more in Japan, really, for the most part. And at one point, I mean, all of those Chan like domains were owned by like one Japanese businessman, tech guy. For a while, and in Japan, the whole like Chan anonymous message board thing is like even big. Like everybody does it in Japan, as opposed to here where it's really just the real kind of weirdos on the internet. And again, I know that piece of information because I read a lot of manga because I am an actual nerd, unlike certain people out there. But and I'm sure if we go and QAnon has probably got some sort of line on Elon Musk and again too, it's like it's like Elon Musk would know because he's a billionaire, and it's like I'm fairly I would bet a signed dollar that he probably does know about this because he's he's a fucking creep. He's also, I mean, not to beat up on her, but he's dating Grimes, who's like half his age. She looks like a little kid. Okay,
who is Grimes?
She's like some crappy electronic music artist.
Okay.
I think she's from Canada. There's this insufferable Apple MacBook commercial that features her in it.
Okay.
That's again one of these the MacBook is more important than the Bible, or it's it's a sort of magical instrument that you can achieve all of your life goals and change the world by buying a computer.
I'll say this. I mean, whenever somebody makes these statements, again, the pedo thing, when they say pedo and they call somebody else pedo, or they're doing that, a lot of times that's psychological projection.
Oh yeah.
So you could carry that argument in here. I mean, Elon Musk's girlfriend looks prepubescent or whatever, so you might go, who really is the pedo? We're just saying. I mean, that's a possibility. I don't know. But again, who goes around saying these things even? What is it? Takes one to know one, that sort of thing.
Right, exactly. Well, I know. I mean, that was my other thing. Was just what did Vern Unsworth, say something that Musk knew? Oh, that's got to be a keyword for I don't know.
That's one of those Pizzagate keywords.
Yeah, I was gonna say, maybe Unsworth, flash a pizza pin or something like that. Who knows? And that's again to kind of bring it back. So we're slowly running or vastly running out of time. The hyper reality thing too, where it's what is with the whole pedo thing? It's everyone's a pedo. And it's indistinguishable now. You can't really distinguish between what is because and then you get these things I talked about it in the first hour with JP, this Congressman Jim Jordan, who it seems was definitely looking the other way when some very serious stuff was going on with this boys wrestling team in the shower room, and it's that's real. Okay, or it seems to be more based in reality. But then it's everyone on 4chan is pointing at, look at this music video and this commercial. It's all part of the global pedo, oligarchy. And QAnon will save us from that. Don't worry. And Elon Musk knows about it. It's just you can't distinguish anymore. But Aaron, we're coming up towards the end of the show. I'm very glad to have had you on to bring a little bit of levity, and I think we actually got into some pretty serious topics here. But any kind of last words, anything you want to leave the listeners with, and of course, remind everybody where they can go to listen to your multiple shows right now.
Sure. Well, I would just say don't believe a word Elon Musk says. Don't invest in him financially or philosophically. Let's just leave it at that. If you want to, please listen to the shows. I mean, I just had a new episode of Themes and Memes. Adam and I reviewed Ready Player One, the new Spielberg movie. That was a lot of fun. That's tmpodcast.com. Main website, theageoftransition.com. So, thanks, everybody.
Thank you so much, Aaron, for joining us. Thank you also to JP Sottile, and I will be talking to you all very soon.
No rules. No rules. No taboo topics. No taboo topics. No fear of doom. No fear of doom. We are American Freedom Radio. American Freedom Radio.
Simply Clean Foods is dedicated to providing the best quality food you can buy next to fresh from a farmer's market. Our stringent quality controls and absolute zero GMOs plus testing for heavy metals makes us unique in the storable foods market. Our line of fruits, vegetables, and meats are suitable for everyday use, and you won't have to worry about throwing away valuable groceries ever again. Take out the amount you need and reseal the package for use within the next 6 months. Simply Clean Foods' primary focus is to bring clean food to people all around the world and change the way we look at freeze-dried food in our daily cooking. Go to simplycleanfoods.net. That's www.simplycleanfoods.net today.
American Survival Wholesale is a proud sponsor of the American Freedom Radio. And when you purchase quality products from AmericanSurvivalWholesale.com, you help support this program. Our quality non-GMO foods do not contain MSG, high fructose corn syrup, or heavy metals. At American Survival Wholesale, you can choose from over 8,000 quality products, including self-defense weapons, bug-out bags, and long-term storable food at wholesale prices. We also have custom food packs available, including gluten-free, dairy-free, and vegetarian packs. If we don't have it, you don't need it. American Survival Wholesale is a veteran-owned and operated company which also supports our veterans in need, and we are very active in disaster relief. If you would like to become a distributor, please email us at bugoutamerica@usa.com or call 818-720-0759. We offer free consultations to answer all your questions. Do it today while things are calm. That's AmericanSurvivalWholesale.com.
Assassination. You know what's interesting about assassination? Well, not only does it change those popularity polls in a big hurry, but it's also interesting to notice who it is we assassinate. Do you ever notice who it is? Stop to think of who it is we kill. It's always people who've told us to live together in harmony and try to love one another. Jesus, Gandhi, Lincoln, John Kennedy, Bobby Kennedy, Martin Luther King, Medgar Evers, Malcolm X, John Lennon. They all said, try to live together peacefully. Bam! Right in the head. Apparently we're not ready for that. Yeah, that's difficult behavior for us. We're too busy sitting around trying to think up ways to kill each other. Here's one we came up with. It's efficient, too. Genocide, you know? Killing large numbers of people simply because they don't look like you, they don't talk like you, and they don't have the same kind of hats you do. You ever notice that anytime you see two groups of people who really hate each other, chances are good they're wearing different kind of hats. Keep an eye on that. It might be important.
You're listening to AmericanFreedomRadio.com, the network who perseveres in delivering intelligent debate, constructive dialogue with true independence. The freedom to broadcast the truth is not free at all. So what is American Freedom Radio worth to you? The empowering information with fun, honest and pure integrity behind it provides an example to follow, friendships to flourish, with the moral altruism that pulls no punches. The hosts sacrifice and show remarkable discipline in their duty to deliver quality radio in service to the community with strength, wisdom, and loyalty. The founders of AFR wish to thank you personally for sharing your views and insights to make the best radio and alternative media. Now it's time for you to give something back and play a vital role in the future of America. Be as generous with us as we've been with you. Click on the donate banner at AmericanFreedomRadio.com or volunteer by emailing AmericanFreedomRadio@ymail.com. Vaccine, psychotropic drugs, and artillery batteries not included.
Launch sequence initiated.
We're now in the approach phase. Everything looking good. Control 0 out. Good to go. Good. 5. Roger, copy.